Good morning, USA. Good afternoon, UK, on Thursday, the 29th of September, and it is reflection number 516. We're going to look or talk about or consider the hurricane that's hitting Florida today. Hurricane Ian battering the west coast of Florida. Huge storm surges, widespread damage. I think there was 2 million or more without power. Houses destroyed, and even lives lost. So the question most often asked about a natural disaster is whether this is from God. Has God sent Hurricane Ian? Is God the one that's causing this destruction? This question is problematic because it imposes within the question a good or bad posture depending on the answer. So you say, yes, God sent the hurricane, but then people are going to say, well, hold on, I thought God was a God of love. Why is he causing destruction, storm surges, and such suffering upon people? Surely God wouldn't do that. The worst answer, the absolute most ludicrous and idiotic answer, is to say that no, God did not send this hurricane, because the conclusion of that is that there are things within the created order that just happen outside of God's sovereign authority. And that is a terrible position to be in. So the fact is, God is sovereign. There is no aspect of the created order that functions outside of God's authority, will, and power. And so God will allow things to happen within the created order. It doesn't mean that he causes them. He isn't the person that decides, I'm going to have a natural disaster now. But he doesn't allow them. That's the truth. God allows these things to happen. The next question would be, of course, why on earth would God allow natural disasters to happen? Well, there are quite a few answers to that question, but I want to focus on two that interlink and overlap. The first is that God does judge nations. That is true. God will judge nations. But the second reason is God often wants to get our attention. So these two reasons overlap. God will judge a nation as it starts to reject goodness, morality or moral living, ethical living. If it does abuse and becomes a dictatorship and so forth, God will judge corrupt and immoral nations. And often he allows that through natural disasters. Think of the Bible. Famine, it was a way that God got people's attention often. He used a storm to bring Jonah back, and he rained down fire from heaven upon Sodom and Gomorrah. So God judges nations, but he also wants to get our attention. And that's the point of a natural disaster. Whether or not you think God sent it or allowed it or wasn't involved in it at all, the point of a natural disaster is to lead us to look to God, because it makes us feel extremely powerless. America, one of the greatest countries on the earth, if not the greatest country on the earth, as Americans will tell you, powerless to stop this hurricane. They have no ability to stop it. So in other words, America is utterly powerless in the face of this storm. And if there were 5 storms hitting America at the same time, nothing they could do. So a storm hits and you realize how powerless you are, and you start to think of a higher being, a created being, maybe a designer of the universe. And so these natural disasters are meant to lead us to look to God and to discover that there is a creator. Another thing about hurricanes especially is that it's almost like a foretaste of judgment. Florida knew that this hurricane was coming. For a week or so, people were warned. They were warned to flee, to get out. But some refused the warning. Some stayed. Some did not believe it would be as bad as it was reported. And now there are some of those regretting their decision, and possibly their lives are now in danger. So what an image of judgment in the gospel. We warn people of a time is coming now, and it will come, this storm of judgment from God, and an accounting that will be demanded. Some reject it, some accept it. The gospel is effectively a call to evacuate your life of sin and flee to the safety of Christ. May God bless you today. May his face shine upon you. May you know the love of Christ in your life. In Jesus' name.